Sure. Our insect presenter is going to be Wizzy Brown. She did last year's class for us. She is with Texas A&M AgriLife in Austin. Uh, she's an obviously an Aggie. Most AgriLife agents are Aggies, right? So with that, I'll let you start, Wizzy.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. So we are going to be talking about arthropods, and if you have questions as we're going along, you can throw them into the chat box, and then at the end I will go through everything and answer any questions that you guys might have. I'm going to turn off my camera so I'm not distracted looking at myself. All right. So we're doing entomology, which is the study of insects. But when we think about insects, there are a lot of very closely related organisms that we also tend to get asked questions on. And so those are usually going to be arthropods. And the big characteristic that all arthropods share is that they have an exoskeleton. So that's going to be that hard outer covering. So essentially their bones are on the outside of their body. To go along with the exoskeleton and to allow the arthropods to move around, they have metamerism, which means that they have segmented bodies and they have jointed appendages, and that helps them be flexible enough that they can get around. Internally, arthropods are going to have a ventral nerve cord running along the underside of their body. The circulatory system runs along the back, and they do have a dorsal aorta, but it is an open circulatory system where the aorta will pump the blood, and then for the rest of the time, it just kind of sloshes around in the body. The left-hand picture on the bottom there, it shows you the bilateral symmetry. If you cut an arthropod in half lengthwise, their internal and external structures are going to be mirror images of one another for the most part. The last characteristic of arthropods is that they are going to have sexual reproduction at some point in their life. Notice I said at some point in their life, so not all arthropods always have sexual reproduction. There are ones that will mate at a certain time, and then for the rest of the time, they are pumping out babies other ways, like clones of themselves. Aphids are a well-known example of that. We are going to start off talking about non-insects. And these are just, I tried to include stuff you guys would either get questions on or that you would be coming into contact with when you're out and about looking at stuff. And our first ones, these are in the group myriapods. Myriapods are going to have a head that has a pair of antennae. They have a long worm-like body, and then they have lots and lots of legs. And the two most common that we deal with are going to be the millipedes, which are on the top there, and the centipedes, which are on the bottom. And you can see the similarities, but they also are going to be different. Millipedes are going to have two pair of legs on each segment of their body, whereas centipedes are going to have one pair of legs on each segment of their body. Millipedes are also going to have a more rounded body, whereas centipedes are going to have a more flattened body. And then while these are both found outdoors, typically in kind of hidden areas, they are going to be beneficial in different ways. Millipedes are going to be decomposers. They feed on decaying organic matter. And centipedes are going to be beneficial as predators, and they're going to feed on other arthropods. Our next group is the subphylum Chelicerata, and there are a lot of things in the Chelicerata group, But the main one that we deal with as entomologists are going to be the arachnids, and arachnids are more than just spiders. So these are going to have two body regions. They have what is called a cephalothorax, so it's essentially a fused area of the head and thorax, and then they have the abdomen. They have 6 pair of appendages. That is 4 pair of legs and then 2 pair of mouth parts. If you look at the scorpion picture, the green part that you see, the dark green, is the cephalothorax, and the yellow part is the abdomen. The light green appendages are the legs, and the blue appendages are the mouth parts. So the elongated pincher claws that you would see on a scorpion are actually mouth parts known as pedipalps. That is what they use to grab a hold of their food and pull it in towards the chelicerae, which is the other part of the mouth that will masticate the food, and then they start to digest it at that point. These are just some arachnid examples. On the right, we have an orb weaver. That is a kind of a quintessential spider. If you see a spider that makes a very flat kind of wheel-like web that's in a grid-like, very neat pattern, that is going to be an orb weaver. They have very poor eyesight, and they actually require that web to hunt for food. To the left of that is a whip scorpion, also known as a vinegaroon. Those ones, while they have a long whip-like tail, which is where they get the name whip scorpion, they do not sting. They actually release a chemical that's very similar to acetic acid, and it smells like vinegar. So that's where they get the name vinegaroon. To the left of that, we have a striped bark scorpion. That is the most common scorpion species that we have in Texas, and they are capable of stinging. That sting is at the end of their tail. They will use that stinger to either help themselves eat by paralyzing prey, or they can use that in defense. And then on the far left, we are going to have a brown dog tick, and those are in the order Acari. So their body is a little bit different than spiders and stuff. They don't have that constriction. So they look a little bit different, but we do have plenty of various types of ticks in Texas, and some of them are capable of vectoring disease. So that's one that you do have to pay attention to and look out for. When we look at insects, they are going to have 3 body regions. They have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. The head is going to have a pair of antennae. They also are going to have compound eyes, which is how they see the world. That's how they see the picture. They also can pick up colors. Then some insects are going to also have what are known as simple eyes, or ocelli. And the ocelli are going to essentially detect changes in light. The thorax is where everything that moves that insect around is going to be attached. So the thorax is divided into 3 sections. Each section has a pair of legs. And most adult insects are going to have 2 pair of wings, and they will be flying around. Hold on a minute, just a second, excuse me. Karen, hey. Sorry, my mother-in-law was calling and I needed to pass the phone off to my husband. So adult insects are going to have 2 pair of wings. They're going to be capable of flying, but there are some adult insects that don't have any wings. There are some that have like reduced wings, and then immature insects aren't going to have fully developed wings. The abdomen is going to be mainly for internal structures, but they do tend to have a few things that might be attached at the tip of the abdomen. Those are usually going to be either sensory structures or reproductive structures. Moving into our orders, this is by no way, shape, or form all of the insect orders because we would be here for a much longer period of time if we did that. I tried to hit the high points on the common stuff. The first order is Odonata. These are the dragonflies and damselflies. These tend to be larger insects, and these are going to be predatory as both immatures and adults. The immature stages are going to be aquatic, whereas the adults are going to actually fly around and then rest on vegetation. When you look at the adults, they're going to have that elongated abdomen. If you look closely at their head, they're going to have large eyes, which helps them as predators. They also are going to have small bristle-like antennae in between those eyes. They also have chewing mouth parts. Again, chewing mouth parts in both adult and the immature stages. And this is a big characteristic. When you look at the wings, they are going to have four membranous wings that are elongated. So lots of cells, lots of veins and cross veins in them. And looking at the differences between the dragonflies and the damselflies, these are in different suborders. Our dragonflies are on the left, damselflies on the right. Dragonflies are going to be more stout of body. They are going to usually hold their wings out when they are at rest. And if you look at where the wings join the thorax, they are going to be attached broadly to the body. Damselflies, on the other hand, are going to have a more delicate body, and they tend to fold their wings over their back when they're at rest. They are going to be attached to the thorax very narrowly, so it's almost kind of like on a stalk, and then that wing will expand out from there. Our next order is Orthoptera. These are the grasshoppers, katydids, and crickets. They can range in size from small to very large, and a lot of these are going to be plant feeders. Some of them will be scavengers. There are some that are even predatory, but some of them also might be omnivores where they feed on both plant and animal matter. These are going to have chewing mouth parts in both the adult and the immature stages. Immatures of these are going to look very similar to the adults, but they won't have fully developed wings, but you can still tell that they're a grasshopper or katydid. And this is the big characteristic on these. They are going to have those specialized hind legs that are modified for jumping. If you look at the wings of them, which it's difficult to see that if you are just looking at it when it's sitting around, you kind of have to look at them in a collection. But some of them are wingless in all stages. The matures are going to be wingless. But those that have wings, the front wing is going to be elongated. It's going to be more skinny and it's somewhat thickened. The hind wings, on the other hand, are going to be membranous and they're going to be very broad and wide. And when they fold them up, it's almost like a fan. So they'll fold those back and they cover them with the front wings. The Orthoptera are also going to have what is called a pronotum. It is at an extended plate-like area on the thorax, but theirs will extend back and covers the base of the wings. And that is what you're seeing highlighted in yellow. And on the top here, we have grasshoppers. So on the left, we have what are called short-horned grasshoppers. And then on the right, we have what are known as long-horned grasshoppers. That's another name for katydids. On the bottom, we have two different types of crickets. So on the bottom left, we just have like a regular cricket, like that would be a field cricket or a house cricket. And on the right, we have a mole cricket. Crickets are going to vary because they are going to have circi, which are sensory structures that come off of the tip of their abdomen. And that's what you see colored in pink. The other thing is on the bottom left and the top right, you see a green structure coming off of those insects. That is known as an ovipositor. And that is what insects will use to lay eggs. So only female insects are capable of laying eggs. So they are the only ones that are going to have that ovipositor. And this is just to kind of give you a real life picture of crickets. And you can see the circe there. And you can see the male versus the female. Males on the top, female on the bottom. So you can see that ovipositor that is on the female there. Dermaptera is the order name for earwigs. These are also going to have immatures, which are in the top right-hand corner, that look similar to the adults, but the immatures don't have fully developed wings. Earwigs are going to have an elongated, flattened, kind of slender body. They have chewing mouth parts as both adults and immatures. And the big characteristic for them is that the circi that come off of the tip of the abdomen are going to be forceps-like. They are hardened. And they don't use those circi for us. They're not for us at all. They're actually for them when they're out looking for food or they're hunting or they're fighting other males for like mating with females and things like that. Earwigs may or may not have wings. Those that do, the front wing is going to be shortened and leathery, and then the hind wing is going to be membranous. I have in nature seen an earwig with its hind wings out. They're always folded up underneath those front wings. Mantodia are the mantids. And these are going to be fairly large insects when they are in the adult stage. They are predaceous as both adults and immatures. The immatures are going to look similar to the adults, but they, again, will be smaller and don't have fully developed wings. These are going to have specialized front legs, known as raptorial front legs, that are modified for grasping prey. And you can see this one right here has a sharpshooter that it is munching on. And so they will eat the prey while it's alive. So those legs, they have these like great big spines on them and they can really grasp on. When you look at the mantid, it looks like it has kind of what we call a long neck. And they're going to have those triangular head, large eyes, long antennae, and that first section of the thorax, which is called the prothorax, is going to be longer than the mesothorax. So each section of the thorax has a pair of legs on it. If you look at the mantid, you can see where the first pair of legs attach, and then you go back and see where the second and third pair of legs attach, and you can see that it is much, much longer than those other sections. The order Blatodia, it used to just be the cockroaches, and that was back when they looked at insects and morphological characteristics of insects, and they grouped things together by ones that looked similar to one another, and they said, oh, okay, you're all going to be in this group. Now that they are doing genetic sequencing of insects, they are finding different relationships that don't necessarily fit together, logically speaking, but they know that they're related because they look at the genetics of them. And this is probably the most drastic one, I say, that we had in the past, 15 years. So the order Blatodia is now the cockroaches and the termites. When we look at cockroaches, we have superfamilies of Blabberoidea and Blatoidea. The Isoptera actually fit into that superfamily of Blatoidea, which are the smaller cockroaches, and they are in their own infraorder Isoptera. So if you look at the order overall, essentially all I can say that they have in common is that they have chewing mouth parts and an incomplete life cycle. So if we look and split the two of them apart with the cockroaches and the termites, looking first at our Blatodia, these are going to be the cockroaches, and they are essentially specialized for running. They're going to have an oval-shaped body, specialized legs for running. They have prominent cerci that come off of the tip of their abdomen that they use as sensory structures. They're going to have a pronotum or a shield-like structure that will actually protect their head. Their head is going to be deflected downward, and they are going to have very long antennae usually. And those species that have wings, their wings are going to be almost kind of shiny or greasy looking. They're somewhat soft, and some cockroaches can fly with those wings, other cockroaches can't. These are probably the three most common cockroaches that I get questions on. And the ones on the left are going to be some of the larger species. The top one, the smoky brown, those get about 3/4 of an inch. The American cockroach on the bottom, they get maybe 1.25 inches. And then on the right, that is one of the smaller species. That's the German cockroach. And those ones only get 1/2 inch as adults. And the larger species of cockroaches, both the smoky browns and Americans, they are outdoor species. They can come inside, but typically that is them in search of some sort of a resource, whether that is a cozier place to live or food or water or something. If you see them, they're not usually living indoors. German cockroaches, on the other hand, they will actually live inside your home, and they are typically more of a concern from a pest standpoint. Termites. So these are in the order Blatodia, again, infraorder Isoptera. Termites are a true social insect. For some truly social or eusocial, they have to have certain characteristics. One of them is that they have a caste system. So you can see there are different groupings here. On the left picture, we have the queen and king. In the bottom middle picture, we have the workers, and then on the right, we have our soldiers. So the soldiers are going to have a hardened head capsule with either enlarged mandibles, or some of them will have like a little horn kind of structure. The workers are going to essentially all look the same. They are creamy white, soft-bodied, wingless insects. And then the reproductives, you may see them with or without wings. It depends on what stage they're in. So when we look at the workers, those ones are usually a lot of the immatures. You can see them in the different stages there. So workers are what we would call the nymphs. The soldiers, on the other hand, are what nymphs or can molt into. A worker termite can either turn into a soldier or a reproductive. So the soldiers are going to do the defense of the colony. The workers are going to take care of the king, queen, and the eggs. They also will forage for food. They also will build the colony. Then when we look at our reproductives, the reproductives, like I said, you may see them with wings, you may see them without wings, you may see them paired up like you see on the right. That's the male and the female together. When they emerge out of the colony, they will have wings. They fly up into the air. They will find a mate and they drop to the ground. And when they drop to the ground, they will shed those wings. When we are identifying termites, if you want to know if you have a termite, you can give me any of those stages. But if you want to know what kind of termite you have, I need either soldiers or reproductives. those are the ones that have characteristics that we could actually determine what type of termite that you have by looking at it. Another one that was kind of shifted around with genetic sequencing. This is the order Hemiptera, which used to just contain the true bugs, but now it has another that used to be a separate order, Homoptera. It has those groupings in it. So these are going to be order Hemiptera, and I have broken this down into the 3 suborders. We have the Achinorhyncha, the Heteroptera, and the Sternorhyncha, and we'll talk about each of those. So when we're looking at the hemipterans overall, so the big order before we get to the suborders, these are going to have piercing, sucking mouth parts. So it's a long tube-like structure that has 4 piercing stylets. It is enclosed in a hardened sheath that they will use to then puncture into whatever they're feeding on, whether that's an insect, a mammal, a plant. And then inside of that, the other parts of the mouth parts called the maxillae were going to fit together to form a food channel. It's very similar to kind of like a soda straw, so they can slurp up whatever they're feeding on. All right, looking at just the suborder Heteroptera. These are the true bugs. And while not all of them have wings, the ones that do have wings are going to have what is called a hemielytra. So when you look at the wing or the front part of that wing is going to be hardened. The back part of that wing is going to be membranous. These are typically going to have a shield-shaped body. It might be a more squat shield shape like you see on the stink bug, or it might be a more elongated shield shape. The adults, since they have those wings, they are going to have this triangle on their back. Again, it's just part of the body and it kind of helps protect them there. The suborder Achinorhyncha are the hoppers, the spittle bugs, and the cicadas. These are going to typically have wings in the adult stage. The immatures do not have fully developed wings. So the immatures are going to look similar to the adults, but they don't have those wings fully developed. When you see the adults, you can actually see that they have wings that are held tent-like over the body. And this is going to be like a 2-man pup tent that's kind of a triangular shape, not some big fancy glamping kind of thing. Looking at the suborder Sternorhyncha, these are what we call the plant parasitic insects. These are going to be things like aphids, mealybugs, whiteflies, scale insects. And when we look at a lot of these insects, they don't have wings, whether that's in the immature stage or the adult stage. A lot of them don't have them. When we look at the whiteflies, which you see on the upper right-hand picture, they don't have wings as immatures, but they do have wings as adults. And again, you can see those wings are going to be held kind of roof-like or tent-like over the body. When we're looking at the other insects that are in this group, things like aphids, mealybugs, and scale insects, a lot of the time we don't see any that have wings. If you do see some that have wings, if you look in this picture, some of the aphids, like this aphid, like way over here on the left-hand side, it actually has wings, but that is a male. Only the males of those insects are going to have wings. The immatures and the females don't have wings. The Coleoptera are the beetles. This is the largest order of insects with the most species described. There's over 250,000 that are described around the world, and that is described species. That's if we estimate how many there are, there's probably a million more of them. We have over 30,000 species of beetles within the United States and Canada. And beetles are very, very diverse in habitats that they're in the foods that they consume, in the size and colors and shapes that they have. We have beetles that are the size of a head of a pin. We have beetles that are probably like 5 or 6 inches in size. It's very, very diverse. But all beetles are going to have in the adult stage elytra. The front pair of wings are hardened and they don't have any wing venation in those front wings. The hind wings are membranous, and if the beetles can fly, not all beetles fly as adults, but those that do only are going to use their hind wings. Essentially, they will lift up those elytra, spread out their hind wings, and they will use those to fly. And then when they're not using those, the membranous wings get tucked up underneath the elytra. And the benefit of having those elytra is they protect the hind wings, and it kind of makes those beetles almost like little tanks. And so everything's kind of protected. They have very hard exoskeletons. Beetles are going to have chewing mouth parts in both the adult and the immature stages. These are going to have complete metamorphosis, whereas everything that we talked about previously has incomplete metamorphosis. And the big difference is they have different life stages. So incomplete is going to have egg, several nymphal instars, and an adult stage, whereas complete metamorphosis is going to have egg, several larval instars, a pupal stage, which is a transformation stage, and then the adult stage. That means that the larvae, or the immature stage of things that have complete metamorphosis, are going to look very different often than the adult does. If you want to know how to identify them, you're going to need to know what both of those stages look like. When we look at beetle larvae, the body shapes are going to be essentially in two forms. It's generally worm-like with a well-developed head capsule and 3 pair of legs. But we have the grub, white grub or grub worm. Those are going to be what you see on the top. So they're going to be that kind of creamy white C-shaped larvae. Whereas the other stage is the mealworm or the wireworm, which is a more hardened, more kind of yellowish tan exoskeleton, and they have more of a straight body. They don't tend to curl up in that C shape like you see with the grubs. The order Neuroptera are the net-winged insects. These are things like mantis flies, lacewings, antlions, and owl flies. The antlion is what you see on the left. That is the immature stage. This is another one that has complete metamorphosis. And the larvae that you see on the bottom there is actually what you will find at the bottom of an antlion pit. When we look at the Neuroptera, the wings are going to have lots of veins and cross veins. They're very net-like, which is why they're called the net-winged insects. And the wings are about the same size and shape as well. They have chewing mouth parts as both adults and immatures. And the larvae of the Neuroptera can really look variable. So if I go back real quick, you can see there's what the antlion looks like. And then this one down here is a green lacewing larvae. The order Hymenoptera are the bees, wasps, ants, and sawflies. These are beneficial as parasites, predators, and pollinators. So this is a wonderful group. Not to say that we can't have problems with some of these, because we do have some of them that they are social insects and they are going to excuse me, defend their colony. And some of those are capable of stinging, and that can lead to being problematic. The Hymenoptera are going to have four membranous wings. The front wing is going to be larger than the hind wing, and they often don't have a lot of venation in that wing. When you look closely at them, the wings can actually attach together. The hind wing will actually have a series of hooks on the leading edge of it. And then on the back of the front wing, there's a thickened area that will allow those hooks to kind of grab onto the front wings. So when the wings move, instead of four wings moving individually, it's just two sets of wings. So it attaches that front wing and hind wing together so they move in tandem as they're moving around. On the bottom right, it shows a carpenter ant, and you can see that's just kind of not all of the Hymenoptera have wings. There are ants that are going to have wings. Those are going to be the reproductives, but they do not have wings as workers. And then the reproductives will only have wings when they emerge out of the colony. Again, once they drop to the ground, they will get rid of those wings and then they go down into the ground. Hymenoptera are going to be divided into two large suborders. We have the Apocrita, which is where the majority of the Hymenoptera are going to be. So those are our bees, wasps, and ants. Those are going to be insects that have what we call a pinched waist. Essentially, there is a constriction between the thorax and the abdomen. The other suborder is Symphyta. Those are the sawflies. Those ones are going to have a broadly joined waist. So where you see the thorax and the abdomen joined together, it is broadly joined and not pinched together. Hymenoptera are going to have chewing mouth parts as both adult and immatures. Even when we look at the bees, that's why I put the bee picture over on the left-hand side at the top. Bees, even though they have those tongues for getting nectar, they also have mandibles that they will use to chew pollen. So they're getting protein from that pollen source, and then the nectar is a carbohydrate. The immatures are going to look different from the adults, so they are going to be worm-like, but they do still have chewing mouth parts. A lot of times we don't necessarily see those immatures, especially when we're talking about social insects. Well, a lot of the solitary insects as well, unless you're digging around in their nursery area. The ones that we do tend to see are similar to ones that you see on the bottom, and those are actually sawfly larvae. Sawfly larvae are often mistaken for caterpillars because they often will kind of group together and they're feeding on plant foliage, and a lot of people think that they're caterpillars. And to tell the difference essentially between a caterpillar and a sawfly larvae, you have to count the number of prolegs. The prolegs are what we call false legs that are on the abdomen. And I can't remember. I want to say caterpillars have 5 to 7 and sawflies have over 7. I could be lying on that, but I think that that's what it is. The Lepidoptera, we're headed into the home stretch. The Lepidoptera are the butterflies, skippers, and moths. Skippers are essentially just type of butterfly, but they do kind of look a little bit different. The adults are going to feed on nectar, and the larvae usually feed on plants. There are some predatory caterpillars. And the big characteristic when we are looking at Lepidoptera adults is that they have their wings, bodies, and legs covered with scales. That is actually what is giving them their coloration and patterns that you see that everybody thinks is just so beautiful. The adults and immatures are going to have different types of mouth parts. Adult mouth parts are siphoning or vestigial. So either they have a very long soda straw-like tube that they can extend down into flowers and get nectar, and then it will curl up when they're flying around. Or if it's vestigial, that means that it's reduced because they're non-feeding as adults. The immatures, on the other hand, are going to have chewing mouth parts. The larvae of them are going to have a worm-like body, so it's elongated. They do have a head that has a short pair of antennae on it. They have 3 pair of legs on their thorax, and then they have those prolegs along the abdomen. And you can see that on this black swallowtail caterpillar here that has those prolegs. So those are just those little fleshy things that it's using to hold onto the stalk that are on its abdomen. The Diptera are the flies, mosquitoes, and midges. This is another huge order coming in after the beetles, another very diverse order in feeding habitat and the way that they look.
Mainland Russia to the Crimean Peninsula, kind of where that is there. It serves as one of the most important supply lines for the Russian military in its war against Ukraine. The bridge is so important that Russian President Vladimir Putin visited himself, driving the very first truck over the bridge we visited years back. And this morning, Ukraine claimed that they did this to that bridge. This is what Ukraine claims to be 2,420 pounds of TNT snuck in underwater and attached to one of the bridge's. Bridge is now deep behind enemy lines.
Wizzy, I'm not sure we're hearing your audio anymore. We're hearing
I'm not talking, but I was trying to mute the other whatever that was, but I don't have that capability.
I gotcha.
Okay. So when we're looking at the Diptera, they are going to have they're one of the
operation the Ukrainian military called Spiderweb.
They are one of the 2 orders that we have that only have 1 pair of wings. And for the Diptera, their front wings are going to be fully developed. If they're flying around, that's what they're using to fly. The second pair of wings have been reduced into what are called halteres, and they actually will use those to help them fly, but they use them as a gyroscope to balance and kind of direct where they're going. The larvae of flies are generally called maggots. These typically are going to be legless, and again, depending on the actual maggot, the head may be well developed or it may be reduced. This is kind of a quintessential muscoid fly maggot. So if you see a housefly or something, this is what the larvae looks like. And these do have a head capsule. It's just very, very tiny, and it's at the pointy end. I do want to go back on. So with flies, flies, mosquitoes, midges, lots of different habitats, lots of different food. If we're talking about, house flies and stuff like that, a lot of people give flies a bad rap because they're considered to be kind of associated with filth. But we have a lot of flies that are predatory. The robber flies are a really good one. We have a lot of flies that are pollinators. That includes our muscoid flies like the housefly and our blowflies. But a really common one are going to be like bee flies. Those are known as pollinators. We also have the syrphid flies or the hover flies, also called flower flies. But mosquitoes are also another one that can be pollinators. Mosquitoes are going to
take off any mask that she puts on for people she doesn't feel she can fully trust. I get it. You want to listen to her share her heart, get to know the real her.
No, so the reason I'm into this girl is
mosquitoes are going to feed on nectar as adults, And they typically will do that first. They need the nectar to actually get their energy, and then they'll mate. And after mating, the female mosquitoes are going to require a blood meal. So only female mosquitoes are going to bite mammals and get that blood. Well, yeah. So not all mosquitoes are going to be terrible. Male mosquitoes, they just get a bad rap because of association. But the female mosquitoes are going to be the one that need that blood. So looking at resources, if you want more information on insects, there are a ton of books and field guides out there. You can either go like more general with the common insects of Texas, like you see at the bottom, or you can get more specific if you have a particular topic that you're interested in. I highly recommend The Butterflies of Houston in Southeast Texas. It is an excellent book. The Bees in Your Backyard. If you are wanting to know more about native bees, that is the best book that I have come across on native bees. It has like maybe 2 pages on honeybees, because usually when people talk about bees, they're talking about honeybees. But we have tons and tons of bees that are native to our state, and they do much better with our native plants than the honeybees do. And then if you want something to throw in a bag or your car or whatever, if you're traveling, the field guides that you see, like the Spiders of Texas there, those are from Quick Reference Publishing. They are laminated and they are really good. Covers a lot of information in a very small amount of space. So I highly recommend them. And then my last suggestion would be if you are getting a field guide, whether that's for insects or birds or reptiles or whatever, I really would recommend that you go to a store. I'm not saying you have to buy it, but go to a store, browse through the field guides because they are laid out differently, and find one that works with your brain. Because I have a ton of field guides, and there are some that I never touch because I just don't like the way that they're laid out, and it doesn't work for me. And then there's some that I absolutely love. So, get something that works for you. And, it might not necessarily be this. I mean, I like this, but that might not necessarily be the best source for you. So find something that works for you. Helpful internet sites. AgriLife Learn is where we have all of our entomology publications. So, and that's whether it's dealing with insects or plants or wildlife or financial management or canning vegetables or whatever. It's all on there. And the new thing with AgriLife Learn, well, relatively new, is that people are able to now upload courses that you can take on there as well, so you can look for those. I'm sure that everybody on here is already utilizing iNaturalist, so that is a great resource as well. You can use that to help kind of figure out what you might be looking at. Just be aware that iNaturalist isn't always 100%. That's why we have those people that come behind and say, yeah, I think you're right, or no, I think it might be this. On the right-hand side of this slide, I do want to mention that we do have some extra courses. One, since you guys are going to be master naturalists, we do have a master volunteer advanced entomology training that is held every year in the fall. You do have to be a certified master gardener or naturalist to take the course. So you guys wouldn't be able to take it like right now unless you're graduated and you already have your hours done and whatnot. Then you could probably sign up. But I don't know if there are any spaces left because it does sell out pretty much every year. But we do hold it every year. And that one consists of 2 months worth of classes. We hold class twice a week on Tuesday and Thursday, and classes held from 10 to 12. All of the classes are recorded. So if you can't make the training live for one of the classes, you can go back and watch the recording. And that covers a variety of topics depending on, speakers we're going with. But generally, we are covering stuff for both Master Gardener and Master Naturalist. So we're not just talking about biology and what we do talk about control of things as well, because we're trying to appease everybody. To become certified as going through the advanced training and to get your little entomology pin, you would need to go through the whole entire course, and then you are required to do an entomology-based project that has 20 volunteer hours associated. And that is 20 hours in addition to whatever you have to do to certify for your Master Naturalist that year. If you don't care about certification and you just want more information on bugs, I have started doing an entomology short course. I have basics that is held in the spring, and then the advanced class is held in the fall. So I do recommend that you take the basics class first because it's going to give you the general basis. We go into way more entomology. We go into all of the orders and how to identify the orders. We talk about identifying spiders. We talk about identifying beneficials. And then the advanced class that I'm holding this fall is covering identification. We're going to go to families in certain orders. So I'm doing some families of the Hymenoptera. I'm doing some of the Lepidoptera. I'm trying to think of what else. I can't remember what the other two are, but we'll be going into detail on how to identify specific groups within the particular orders. So that's why I kind of do the basics first and then the advanced second. And, that will be offered next year as well. And then to find me, if you have questions, if you need something identified, if you are, I don't know, needing a second opinion on, pest control or whatever. My background is in urban entomology, so I was in pest control for 3 years before I got my job with the Extension Service. So I can help you with those questions. But if you want to follow the podcast, you can. We have that. It's called Bugs by the Yard. We post 2 episodes a month. And then I am also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I do short video clips about bugs that I'm finding, and it's called Backyard Bug Hunt. You don't have to follow me at all, but if you do, choose whatever one that you normally use because I post the same exact video on all 3 platforms. I just find that there are different cohorts that are on those 3 separate social media sites. And I am social media'd out with those 3, so I'm not adding anything beyond that at this point, unless they make me. All right, so I am going to pull up chat and answer some questions. Are cicadas and katydids, this is an excellent question, not a silly question at all. Are cicadas and katydids the same insect? They are not. So katydids, and they're actually in 2 separate orders. Katydids are going to be a type of Orthoptera. They are one of the longhorned grasshoppers. And then cicadas are going to be, well, they're cicadas, but they are in the order Hemiptera and suborder Aconirhyncha. And the other one that gets confused is some people will call locusts. So they'll call cicadas, like the ones that chirp in the trees, they'll call those locusts. And true locusts, like the real term for a locust, that is a type of grasshopper. Can ants be in two orders at the same time, like black and red fire ants? They cannot be in two orders. The order is Hymenoptera that they're in, so it's all going to be the same order. They are in the same family, which is Formicidae. They are in the same genus, which is Solenopsis. Solenopsis is our fire ants. But when we get down into the black fire ant versus the red fire ant, those are going to be different species. So they are different species, but they are in the same order. Is it true that if you have June bugs that you have grub worms? Okay, so, and you definitely need to listen to our podcast because we just talked about June bugs and that will be posting next Thursday. So we just recorded that yesterday and we're going to be posting it next Thursday. But June bugs essentially are, it's a June beetle. So they are a actual beetle, and that refers to essentially any beetle that emerges out as an adult in June. And that we have, I think, what was that? I want to say we had over 80 species of them in Texas, and they all look very similar to one another. Most of them are going to be some shade of a brown. They do come in different sizes. And the thing is, all of those beetles are going to have a larval form that is that creamy white C-shaped larvae that is that grub body form. So yes, if you have June bugs, you have grubs. Does that mean that that is eating your turf? Maybe, maybe not. There are some species that will feed on the roots of turf grass, but not all of them do. If you are having something like if your turf grass is turning brown or whatever, I would advise you to take a look. You can look for things like chinch bugs. You might have a fungal disease. It might be white grubs. That is something that we're actually going to be doing and talking about for next month's podcast. And so tune into that one if you want more information. What is my favorite insect? My absolute favorite insect is the cockroach that you saw on that slide. That was the pale bordered field cockroach. I'll go back so you can see it. Hold on. Oop, there it is. That one right there on the left-hand side. That is my absolute favorite. I think they are so beautiful. We do have them in Texas. They are lovely. And cockroaches are my favorite group or order of insects. My least favorite is probably not necessarily an insect. My least favorite would be an arachnid. I'm fine with them, but I'm really not a huge fan of ticks. And that's just, I grew up in Ohio and it was like, you know, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. And so it was like playing outside until dark. And when you came in, it was tick check time. So, you know, all that good stuff. Where do you go to find out more on the courses? You would probably need to contact me. For the entomology advanced training, the certification one, we do send that out to Mary Pearl to send out to all of the master naturalists. So she will have that. But if you want the short course, then you can shoot me an email and I will get that information out. How concerned should we be about New World screwworms returning? I am not allowed to talk about that right now because there's like a particular group that is working on the screwworm stuff. I can tell you that there is a webinar, a free webinar that AgriLife is doing. If you pop onto my social media, or if you go to AgriLife Extension, like Texas AgriLife Extension, their Facebook page or Instagram or whatever, it will give you that information on how you can watch that webinar. And I would suggest that you tune into that. The people that are doing the webinar are our livestock entomologist is in charge of that, and she knows way more about it than I do. I mean, I know like a very small amount, but currently I am not allowed to comment really on the screwworm thing. So tune into the webinar. And if you need me to send you a link for the webinar, just shoot me an email. All right. Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you, Izzy.
You're welcome.
Always informative. Okay, I guess if there's no other questions, then we'll go to our next speaker.
All right. Thank you. Let me know
Thank
if you have
you.
questions. Shoot me an email. All right. Bye, y'all.
Thank you, Izzy.
Okay, and our next speaker is going to be Janet McCrae.
Do we want to take a short break or no? We have that in the agenda, but
Okay. Do we need a short break?
so many responses. All right, well, we may as well just keep rolling then.
Okay. All yours, Janet.
Okay, let me see if I can. I practiced yesterday on sharing my screen, but let's see if I can get that to do that. Let's see. Share screen.
Looks good.
All right, let me get this thing out of the way here. Put it down at the bottom. This just. Oh, I'm trying to get the people off of there. Let's see. Sorry. It was better now. Oh, okay, well, let me just try and start the. Janet McCrae, and I've been a master naturalist since 2022. And I really got interested in native plants a few years before the COVID pandemic, but then during that time, I had lots of time for research and attending different Zooms, and I started building my knowledge base on native plants. So I grew up in DeWitt County, and this picture was taken in my aunt's front yard in DeWitt County. I just think it's so pretty with all the wildflowers and native trees and flowers. But our first question is, what is a native plant? And so I would say it's a plant that has been in an area since the beginning of time. It's been in that area all its life, not just the past 100 years, but thousands of years. And it's grown up with the soil and the climate of that area. So it has this long historical association with the wildlife in that area. And so why are native plants? Why do we want to have native plants? Well, they're more attractive and useful to our native pollinators and wildlife, just for that reason we just said. They grew up together over the millennia. And so since they've evolved together, they need each other. And our native plants are bird and butterfly food, and they provide habitat for our birds and butterflies and other wildlife. Native plants also increase biodiversity. And so humans cannot live on just one species on this planet. We depend on the other species to create the ecosystem services that are essential to our survival. If we force a species into extinction, we're actually just furthering our own demise. So native plants also save us time and money. Our native plants don't usually die during a heat wave or during a hard freeze. And so we don't have to spend money replacing them afterward. They don't need to be fertilized because they're used to that area. They're more resistant to the local pests, and so they don't require pesticides. And they conserve water, so we don't need to drag water hoses around in our yard, and they reduce mowing. And in fact, if you plant densely, you don't even have to use a lot of mulch either. Your living mulch will keep out the weeds, and that'll save you money on having to buy the mulch. So another reason we want native plants is because they serve as host plants for our caterpillars. Now, host plants are the same thing as larval plants, and so that's the plant that the butterfly lays its eggs on, and then the caterpillars, when they hatch out of the eggs, it's the plant that they need to be able to eat, to live. A lot of these caterpillars are mostly all specialists, and so they only need a special plant. For example, we all are familiar with the monarchs, and they need to have the milkweed, but there are lots of others, like the Gulf fritillary needs passion vine, and painted ladies need thistles, and red admirals need nettles, and question mark butterflies need hackberry trees. So we need this diversity of plants so that we can have a diversity of butterflies. And native plants allow us to plant with purpose and help our local ecosystem. They provide a sense of place and awareness, and they add beauty to our landscape. And as Lady Bird Johnson once said, native plants give us a sense of where we are in this great land of ours. And when I look at places in Texas, I want to be able to know that it's Texas and not some other foreign country or something. So society tends to think that someone somewhere else in that park or that forest is taking care of the earth. The plants and animals aren't really becoming extinct because there's lots of woods and there's lots of animals out there. I don't have to worry about it. And I'm not affected by a loss of diversity. Losing that weed or that bug doesn't affect me. And there isn't a problem. So I don't need to do anything about it. And a lot of people think about themselves or the environment as from their lifetime, what it was like when they were born to now. And so they don't really see the loss of habitat and species that we have. But if you know a person that maybe knew somebody in the generation before them and the stories that they told, for example, my grandfather, when he was a boy, they lived further in North Texas, and they walked and had a wagon, and they walked down through Texas and settled in the DeWitt County area. And he can remember, he told stories of walking across these prairies, and there were no fences, and there was no brush, and no mesquite at that time either. And so I can only imagine how much the environment has changed since he was a boy compared to now as me as an old lady. But anyway, so we need to fix those myths. So here's what's actually happening. This is forest mulching, and these trees and shrubs are just being cut down and destroyed, years of growth destroyed. And what about the birds that used to live in this area? Can they just go to the trees next door and find food? Well, maybe, but what about all the birds that were already living there before they cut all these trees down? There may not be enough bird food for all of the birds. And so what has taken the place of these trees is this Family Dollar store. And this is in Rockport, and the Rockport already had 2 other dollar stores, and they replaced the live oak trees with these small little very small trees and very small shrubs out here. It's going to take years and years for those trees to get large enough to provide the kind of food that the trees that they bulldozed down were providing. But it's not just Rockport, it's also this is in Mission Valley, on the road between my house in Victoria and my mom's house in Yorktown. And this habitat is just perfect for lots of different insects and wildlife. It's got all of the different parts of the layers of the forest. So you've got your canopy trees, which are your large trees. It's got mid-story trees, understory shrubs, and your ground covers. So it's just perfect. But what did they do? They bulldozed all this out and they made a subdivision there. And so they left a few trees, but they even had bulldozers scraping the native plants off of the land, and they pushed all that dirt away and then put new dirt on top. And then most of the people are planting lawns, but they put in this pond wasn't there. They put in a pond, and you can see they've got outdoor lighting that's on all night long. So they're ruining our dark night skies with light pollution. They put in these walking paths, which to me, there's not anything left to go see as you're walking now anymore. They took everything out. I don't want to go around walking and seeing houses. And they put in all these non-native St. Augustine lawns, which before, this area needed no additional watering. It was, all the plants were fine with the rain that they got. But now these people are having to use irrigation and water these non-native lawns. And so they're wasting our precious groundwater on unnecessary vegetation. So what, and concrete everywhere. So they're ruining the ability of the rain to soak in, and now it's running off. It's going to cause problems. But what can we do about all this? Well, educating others. That's what I'm trying to do, is educating others, but we need to do it in a positive way, setting the right example ourselves so people can look and see what we're doing and then hopefully follow that. So remove invasives from your yard, or help master naturalists remove invasives in different places. Turn off our lights at night. They don't really provide that much safety. Which that's the main reason people put them on at night. What you need is a motion detector that's going to come on. The light will come on when somebody is actually moving around in your yard, rather than having it on all night. No mosquito fogging. And so instead of spraying for the mosquitoes, what's a better alternative is get a 5-gallon bucket, fill it with water, put in some leaves, a little dirt, and then put in your mosquito bits or mosquito dunks. And that the BT in those dunks or bits is mosquito specific. It will not harm your pets, will not harm any other insects. It only targets the mosquitoes, and it keeps the larvae from hatching into a mosquito. We need to be shrinking our lawns and planting native species in the place of those lawns. So if half of American lawns were replaced with native plants, we would create the equivalent of a 20 million acre national park. This would be 9 times bigger than Yellowstone and 100 times bigger than Shenandoah National Park. And if you're not familiar with Doug Tallamy, I highly recommend his books. He has Bringing Nature Home and Nature's Best Hope are two of the books he's written. They're easy reads and they are very encouraging of what we can do to help promote native plantings. And if you do put some native plants in your yard, a good idea is to put a sign up, and so people are educated about why you have the plants that you do in your yard. So a few things before we get into the specific native plants. One is, how do you know whether a plant is native or not to your, or is it native to your area? Where is it native to? So many times you can find native plants in a nursery, and you want to support your local nurseries because that's going to support your local economy. But there are ways to find out. And so another housekeeping thing before we get into everything else is, why use a botanical name? And you're going to need to kind of know some of the botanical names in order to look up the plant to find out if it's native or not. So a plant can have lots of common names. For example, the Turk's cap, some people call it Mexican apple, or bleeding heart, manzanita, sleeping hibiscus, or Drummond's wax mallow, or Drummond's Turk's cap. But the scientific name is Malvaviscus arboreus. And a plant has only one botanical or scientific name. And that will help you when you do a search for a plant that you're looking for. So the botanical name, the first part of it is going to be capitalized and it's going to be italicized. The second part is not capitalized, but it's also italicized. And together they comprise the species. So for example, with the Turk's cap, the genus is Malvaviscus, and then the second part, the epithet, is arboreus. And so together that makes up the species Malvaviscus arboreus, and it's in the mallow family or Malvaceae. All right, so then when you want to look for a native plant, so some plants are native to the United States, but if it's native to Montana, it's probably not going to be native to Texas, but it is native to the United States. It's better than being native to Asia or Africa or even South America. But we want to try to narrow it down. So if it's native to your state, that's better than being native to the United States. And then even better is if you can plant native to your ecoregion, and then the best yet is to your county. So probably most of us are in this in the Mid-Coast chapter, are in this Gulf Coast prairies and marshes area. But some of us in the Mid-Coast chapter may be in here in southern DeWitt County, or even in northern Goliad County. And that would be the East Central Texas Plains. So the next part, I'm going to show you how to find out whether the plant you're looking at in your nursery is native to your county or your ecoregion. So there's 3 ways to find out, and I'm going to go through them kind of quick, but you can go to the website yourself and then play around with it and figure it out. But the first one is the Biota of North America, which shortened to BONAP, B-O-N-A-P. And then from that, you go to the North American Plant Atlas, NAPA, and I'm gonna show you how to go through all of it, but I'm just giving you an overview right now. And then the USDA plant database is the next best one, or not next best one, but another one. And then the one I like the best is actually the Native Plant Society of Texas, and their website has a database as well, and it's growing all the time and getting better. So let me go through them for you. So the first one is the BONAP. And so if you put in that website, you're going to get a page that looks like this. And then you would click here on this side, which will bring up the North American Plant Atlas. And then when you do that, it's going to give you, you can actually put in your state, and then it will give you all the plant species that are native, or some are not native, but they're all the ones that are found in that state. And then you can click on the particular one. So I clicked on Solidago altissima, which is tall goldenrod, and it'll bring up a map like this. And so the lime green or lighter green are the counties where that plant has actually been found and reported. So you can see that all of the state is in green. The dark green, it's native to the state, but the light green is that the plant has actually been found in that county and reported to the site. So they have put it in the light green. So here's DeWitt County. So the Solidago altissima is native to DeWitt County. Here's Victoria. It's not showing as being native to Goliad, but it's so close that if you planted it in Goliad, I'm sure it's going to grow fine and it's going to be fine. And then, and every map is a little different too. So you'll see in the next one, the USDA one, it'll be a little bit different, but it's very similar. And you can make these maps bigger or smaller by scrolling up or scrolling in or out. So that'll, you can, I just put it that way so you can see that. So here's the USDA site, and you would type in the botanical name or scientific name right here in your basic search and then press go. And then it'll bring up that map for that plant. So here's Solidago altissima, and here's the map. So it's showing that it's native to Texas. And then the other map, see if I can move my, there we go. And so it shows you the in the green are the counties where it's actually been found and reported. And so you can see some of the counties that were in green before are not green now. And that's why I say if you're in one of these two counties, Lavaca or Jackson, you know, it's probably native there too. Just nobody's reported it in that county. So don't worry about that too much. Okay, then the NPSOT is my favorite one. You would just go to npsot.org, which stands for Native Plant Society of Texas. And you just click right here where it says search for plants. And you'll get this page that will come up. And there's more on the page, and it's all together on one page, and you just scroll through it. But it's going to tell you about native plants, and then it gives you a Texas ecoregions map you can look at, and it has a plant list for you by ecoregion. And I'm going to show you that, and then let's go to that first. So here's the map that it shows you for the ecoregion for our area. And then it has a plant list that you can use. And it's much longer than this. I've just done a screenshot of part of the map of the plant list. But if you're on this page right here and you just kept on scrolling, I'm going to skip this slide and go to the next one. This is what you'll come up with. It's all on the same page. You just keep on scrolling. And then, so here on the side, you can type in the name, the botanical name of the plant if you know it, if you're looking for a specific plant. Or what I did here, I typed in Gulf Coast prairies and marshes, which is our ecoregion. And it tells you at the time when I made this slide, there were 114, but the site was very new at that time. And I looked at it today and they now have 440 native plants just for our Gulf Coast prairies and marshes ecoregion. Excuse me. And so you can also look for plants that fit a specific light category, like if you're wanting to plant in shade or part shade, you can put that in. If you're wanting something that's for a wet area, maybe a water garden, you can put in the type of water you're looking for, or the soil that you have. If you have sugar sand or if you have clay, whatever, you can put that in. And then you would click submit, and then it'll bring up plants over here on the side that fit those categories. So I had typed in the Solidago altissima. And then I also got Solidago sempervirens, which is your seaside goldenrod. And so here it shows you some of the other choices you can put in: bloom color, bloom season, seasonal interest, and wildlife benefit. And click submit, and then it'll bring that up for you. And so here's the seaside goldenrod. And so you can see that it's native to the entire Gulf Coast prairies and marshes area. And then you can also use this to toggle and go to it'll bring up the counties just like on the other maps. So you can see the specific counties that it's native to. And then scrolling on down, it'll show you all the information that you want to know about that particular plant. It'll tell you its height and spread, its leaf retention and lifespan, its sun requirement, water requirement, its native habitat area, bloom color, seasonal time for blooming, any special interest, seasonal interest it might have, and the wildlife it benefits, how to take care of the plant if you get it and want to plant it in your yard, and then some comments about it. So I think it's got a lot of really good information. And to me, it's the easiest site to navigate through. All right, so the third part of the presentation tonight is on the native plants, plants that are native to the Gulf Coast prairies and marshes ecoregion. And so I have this quote here from Doug Ptolemy, my favorite author. As gardeners and stewards of our land, we have never been so empowered to help save biodiversity from extinction. And the need to do so has never been so great. All we need to do is plant those native plants. So as I was telling you before on the picture about Mission Valley, so here is an example of those 4 layers of the ecosystem. And so we have the canopy layer, which has our big trees, tall trees, with examples being live oak, anaqua, mesquite, the Texas sugarberry or hackberry, pecan. There's many, many more. Then you have your mid-story, which is, to me, it's called an understory tree, but in this particular example, it's called a mid-story tree. And so these are your small ornamental trees. For example, red bay, Texas persimmon, a mountain laurel, Texas ebony, redbud, Mexican plum, yaupon, and of course there's lots more of those as well. And then your understory would be like a large shrub. For example, Turk's cap, Esperanza, coral bean, American beautyberry, buttonbush, and so forth like that. And then your ground cover is down here, and that could be this PI's Padre Island mistflower, but really any of your mistflowers, your Bethany leaf mistflower, blue mistflower, probably not your tall fragrant mistflower. The Chromalena odorata is probably more like an understory shrub, but scarlet sage, snake herb, frog fruit, horse herb, all of those are your ground covers. So what I'm going to do is go through each of those layers and give you examples of what can be found in those layers. So first, we have our canopy trees, and this is your southern live oak, which is also known as a coastal live oak. So it gets pretty tall, probably up to 60 feet tall, but really it's the width. It's 80 feet wide at full maturity. And this tree is in my neighbor's yard. It's not really a good tree for an urban lot. It's too big. So this tree is about 50 years old now, and it's so big, and she doesn't really have the money to take care of it like she should. So it's hanging onto the roof of her house, and it was hanging on my roof. I had to get somebody to come and trim it off the roof of my house so it wouldn't damage it. But it's a beautiful tree, very beautiful tree. And it's good because it has it is a host plant, or it's a host plant for many, many butterflies, and it hosts 20 different bird species and uncounted beneficial insects. It provides acorn and browse for deer and other mammals. And oaks capture more carbon and hold more rainwater than other plants. And it's a larval host for the white hair streak butterfly, Horace's dusty wing, and consular oakworm moth. The Texas sugarberry is also known as sugar hackberry or palo blanca, and it is a favorite of at least 10 different species of birds, including robins, mockingbirds, and other songbirds. They love these drupes, which when they are orange and then they turn black, and they are very sweet for the birds to eat. And it is also a larval host plant for 5 different species of butterflies, including snout, tawny, question mark, morning cloak, and hackberry emperor butterflies. And then just some other different large trees. We have the Anaqua, which is the sandpaper tree, and it gets these beautiful blooms after a rain, which are very good nectar for bees and insects. And it has fruits on it as well, and they are good for the birds and mammals. Then your cedar elm is the larval host for morning cloak and question mark butterfly, and it has seeds for birds and mammals too. The honey mesquite is a larval host for long-tailed skipper and Raykert's blue butterflies, and it has nectar for bees and fruits for mammals and birds. And then there's the black willow, which also is host for morning cloak, viceroy, red, spotted, purple, and tiger swallowtail butterflies. And then Texas sable palm, and another one that's a large one is a pecan tree. Okay, and then your mid-story or ornamental trees. So this is your persimmon. I like the persimmon. It is a very good replacement for a crepe myrtle tree because it has similar type bark. It has bark that sheds off, and it leaves this real pretty grayish white underbark and or trunk. And it has fruits. These are the fruits it gets, and those are on the trees right now, but they're not as black as this yet. They're still ripening, but they are edible for people, but they're not all that tasty, but you can make jams and jellies out of it, and it's really good for the mammals. They love it. And the mountain laurel, it's a beautiful flowering a small tree, and it has a fragrance that smells like artificial grape products. Don't mess with the seeds though. I mean, unless you're planting some, but they're very poisonous. You wouldn't want to put them in your mouth or lick your fingers after you've been messing with them. But this tree attracts butterflies and bees, and it's a very slow growing tree and uses very little water. And then some other small trees, the Yaupon holly, which you might remember you saw that at Aransas Wildlife Refuge. As we went up to the tower, there was a lot of those planted along. You could see the berries as we went up the walkway. Red bay gets fruits on it for birds. The ratama has these beautiful yellow flowers, but it's a thorny tree and it's very weak branched, so you wouldn't want to plant it too close to your house. The branches sometimes break off, but it's just a beautiful flowering tree. And then wild olive is another nice ornamental small tree. Okay, then we're moving to the understory shrubs, understory plantings, which are like large shrubs. And this is the button bush, which is a great plant for the side of a pond or a water garden because it loves it wet. It can actually grow in the water, but it can grow out of the water too. You don't even have to really water it all that much. And it grows in sun or shade. But one thing I have noticed is that in the shade, it doesn't really flower that much. I think it'll flower much more in more sun, but then it will need more water as it's in more sun. But it's a great plant for bees and birds and butterflies. Esperanza is a great drought tolerant plant. It will freeze to the ground in the winter, so every spring you'll have to cut it to the ground and haul off the debris, the dead trunks, and then it comes back up from the ground again, from the roots. It does have a fast growth rate though, because even though you cut it down to the ground, it will probably get to 10 or 12 feet in height, at least 10 feet in height and in width within the season. But it's a very good plant for butterflies, hummingbirds, bees, and insects. Cenizo, sometimes known as the Texas barometer bush or Texas sage. It's very drought tolerant. In fact, probably less than 1 inch of water per month, or less than 12 inches per year of water. If it gets too much water, it'll actually die because it just doesn't want it to be that wet. But either before, well, usually after a rain, then you'll see it blooming like this. That's why it's called a barometer bush a lot of times. But it attracts butterflies, hummingbirds, moths, and bees. American beautyberry. This is another one to grow in shade, but it will grow in the sun. But the more it's in the sun, the more you're going to have to water it. In the shade, you don't have to water it hardly at all. It has very small, insignificant, pale pinkish lavender flowers in the spring, very insignificant. But in the fall, it gets these beautiful purple berries that are highly desired by the birds. And it's also edible by people. Maybe not so tasty raw right off the bush, but you can make a very beautiful jellies and jams out of it. All right, Turk's cap, there's Drummond's wax mallow, has these beautiful red turban-like flowers. And this one also does well in part shade, dappled shade, or full shade. It's another one that will die back in the freeze in the winter. And so you have to cut it down and then haul that debris off. So it's a little bit of maintenance, but that's just once a year. So it's not too bad. And it's very beneficial, like the hummingbirds. They like to put that beak down into that turban, and butterflies, moths, bees, insects. And oh, it gets these fruits on it that are edible by people as well, but small mammals love those fruits. Texas lantana. Now it's Lantana urticoides or Lantana horrida is the one you want to get if you're at the store. The Lantana camara, which is with the pink in it, or even the solid yellow, they are not the native ones. Only the ones that are orange and yellow are the native lantana. And it has aromatic foliage, but it's not like aromatic. It's going to be very sweet fragrance. It's more pungent of a fragrance. And it gets purple black berries that the birds like, but don't eat them. They're not edible by people. And it's a very drought tolerant plant. And in the after the winter, it will come back out on this existing wood. But if you cut it back a little bit, maybe to about a foot, it'll come out much more compact and fuller and bushier and so forth. It won't be so leggy. And other shrubs that you might consider are wax myrtle, which has fruits for up to 14 different bird species. And it's also very fragrant. It smells like Christmas, I think. And then the coral bean, which blooms in the spring, it's deciduous. It'll lose its leaves in the winter. And it's also thorny. So if you want to plant it under a window, prevent the burglars from breaking in, that's a good one. Agarita has beautiful yellow flowers it's one of the earliest blooming, like say February or so. And it gets berries in the fall, which are great for jellies and jams. The Barbados cherry also has fruit, gets these pink flowers, and then later it gets these red berries that they're like little cherries, and they are edible by people, and they're high in vitamin C. Now, you probably aren't going to want to go and serve them for dinner, but if we have a event where we can't get any food, they are very nutritious for you. And they are the larval host for a couple of different skippers and the Cassius blue butterfly. And then the bottom down here is Flame Acanthus, very drought tolerant. The flowers can range anywhere from a yellow to a deep orangey red, depending on the different variety that you have. But they are great nectar plants for hummingbirds, and they're larval hosts for the crimson patch and Texan crescent spot butterflies. Then we're moving to our annuals and perennials. This is the mealy blue sage, a Salvia farinacea. It's there are many different kinds of Salvia farinacea or mealy blues. This one happens to be the Henry Duelberg variety. There's also one that's a Victorian blue. And then Henry's wife, Augusta Duelberg, which is a white variety of mealy blue sage. But then some of the other salvias are not native to this area. They're cultivars or native. Some are crossed with the native, and so they're nativars. But if you want to be true to the natives, then you would want to get the mealy blue type Salvia farinacea, not the indigo spires or mystic spires, which they're still good for better than nothing, but not as good as for their insects as the true native variety. But this is one of the top bee plants in my yard. It's just covered with bees as it's blooming. And it's a perennial. It'll stay green through the winter. The only thing about it is after the flowers get through blooming, the top gets kind of dead looking, and it's very helpful if you go ahead and cut it to the ground, and it'll come back up fresh and green. But if it's just been cut down and it's just come up fresh and green in the winter, it'll stay green throughout a freeze. It won't freeze down because of the freeze. You just need to cut it back. You can actually even do that, say 2 or 3 times during the year, and it'll help you get a fresh batch of flowers on it. Scarlet sage is one of my favorites. It grows in sun or shade, and it's these bright red flowers. It reseeds very easily, so just start with one plant, and then before you know it, you'll have them everywhere. And they're easy to pull out if you don't want it, or you can pot them up for our native plant sale in September. So they're very prolific bloomers, and you can deadhead the top of the where after it's finished blooming, you can just cut that part off, and then it'll come out and bloom some more. All right, the Zyzotes milkweed is one of the milkweeds that is native to our area. There's 30 different species of milkweed that are native to Texas. The one you just want to avoid is the Carasavica, which is the only non-native one and it's the one you'll find in all the nurseries, of course, because the non-native one promotes this virus, the OE virus, and which is deadly to the butterflies. So you want to plant a native species of milkweed. Now, some people think they're not as pretty, but I just love this Zyzotes. And when you have it in the sun, it gets these dark red veins. And then right now, I don't have a picture of this, but in my yard right now, the whole entire leaf is red from the sun. It's just beautiful. And then this is what the flower looks like. And then it gets the horns on it after it, and then you'll have the seed inside of the horns. Blanket flower, this is Gaillardia pulchella. It's a short-lived perennial plant, meaning that it can live a couple of years, but most of the time it's an annual. If it gets really cold, it'll freeze down, but if you wanted to try to make it through, you can water it extra good, and a lot of times it'll make it through the winter, even if it does freeze. And then it'll come back sometimes from the roots, but it'll reseed very readily as well. So it's a very showy flower, and it tolerates drought and heat very well. Zexmenia I just think it's a pretty flower, and it is a deciduous perennial. It blooms from May to November and will do in sun or part shade, low water, nectar for butterflies. And it's actually the larval host plant for the border patch butterfly. The wine cup or purple poppy mallow, it's very low growing, very much of a ground cover actually plant, unless you get the standing wine cup, which then it is much taller. But this one only gets about a foot high and 2 or 3 feet wide. And it will bloom, or it will stay all the way from January through December, but if you don't give it extra water in the summer, it'll go dormant in the summer and you'll think you killed it, but then it'll come back in the fall. But give it extra water through the summer and you'll be able to keep it green all year round. Some other annuals include American basket flower and a monarda or horse mint. And there's many types of monarda. The horse mint is the Monarda citriodora, but there's Monarda punctata, which is a real pale color. The citriodora is more purple. And there's a Monarda lindheimerii and Monarda fistulosa. So any of those monardas actually are fine. A green thread has a very thin stem and leaf structure. And then other perennials, skeleton leaf goldeneye, which can get up to 4 feet tall, but just can be covered with the yellow flowers. Here's the Cressita I was saying earlier, the Chromalena odorata. It's very fragrant, fragrant mist flower. It's the #1 nectar plant in the coastal bend, according to Chris Kirkwood, and it is loved by almost all the butterflies, in larval host for border patch and rounded meadowlark. So then here, I don't have a picture of seaside goldenrod. I ran out of room. Then this is Chili Pekin, and then any of the mist flowers. This is betony leaf mist flower. And then we have our vines. Coral honeysuckle is one of the least aggressive vines. It'll only get about maybe 20 feet in length, but it can get real thick, and it's a favorite of your hummingbirds because of these tubular flowers. It will tolerate some shade, but it does better. The more sun it's in, the more flowers it'll get. It pretty much will stay green through the winter, even if it freezes. But if it does freeze down, don't worry, because it'll come right back. Just trim the dead part off. Now, I didn't trim mine at all this past winter. We had some pretty hard freezing nights, and it didn't freeze at all. So down along the coast, I'm sure you're good there. This is the passion vine. Now, it's not it's a deciduous vine, not an evergreen. And so it will freeze down in the winter, and you cut it back, and then it comes back up from the roots. The native passion vine has 3-lobed leaves. So if you have a passion vine with 5-lobed leaves, or you're looking in the nursery for a plant that has 5-lobed, it's not the native variety. And sometimes when they're little baby plants, they'll still have only 3-lobed leaves, but then as they get bigger, you'll see like, uh-oh, now it has 5-lobed leaves. So it probably be Passiflora incense or one of the other cultivars of passion vine. Other vines include our snapdragon vine. This is a really cute little tiny vine, and it gets these pretty purple flowers. They look like little snapdragons. And it's a great plant for hummingbirds, and it's also a larval host plant for the common buckeye butterfly. And it has fruits and seeds for the birds, and it only gets about 6 feet tall, so it doesn't need a very big trellis or anything like that to grow on. The crossvine, however, gets up to 50 feet in length, so you need to have a very sturdy trellis for this. I mean, I'm talking heavy duty wire, but it's a great nectar plant for hummingbirds because it has those tubular shaped flowers. It blooms from about March to May, and then the rest of the year it just stays green. We also have Mustang grapes, which we saw those down at Aransas Wildlife Refuge. And then the Southern dewberry, what we some of you might have those. Now the dewberry and then the blackberries. Dewberries are bigger, but not as sweet as the blackberries. Okay, then our grasses, we have Gulf Muley, which has this beautiful pink spikelets that give it this feathery pink hue in the fall. Very low water and takes full sun. Inland sea oats get these seed pods on there. They turn this brown or golden color in the fall, which is very pretty. And the seeds are eaten by birds and rodents. You can cut this back in the spring, and then it'll come out real fresh and green again because it'll get kind of brown and dead looking over the winter. But I just take my gloved hands and reach in and just grab it and pull, and most all that dead stuff will just come right out. It's a great erosion plant. So if you have a hillside that keeps eroding away, plant this on the hillside, and it'll keep that water. The water will be held in by the roots of this plant. Other grasses include buffalo grass, Lindheimer muley, little blue stem, that's this one over here, bushy blue stem here, and then our side oats grama, which is our Texas state grass. Ground covers, this is horseherb or straggler daisy. It gets these real pretty little yellow flowers, and this plant will do really well in the shade. So if you're having a place under a tree or a side yard that doesn't get enough sunlight for your lawn grass, or you just want to get rid of your lawn, you can plant this horseherb. It gets very thick, and you can actually mow it and it'll be fine. You can walk on it and it'll be fine. Probably not real high traffic areas. That would be like a trail. You might make a trail through it if you walk the same path all the time. But if it's just walked once in a while, it'll be fine to walk on. It attracts small butterflies like sulfurs and skippers. And this is frog fruit, also known as turkey tangle, which is a host plant for the Phaon crescent butterfly. So it's a little verbena type flower. It has this little purple center in it and little white verbena type flowers around. And this is my friend in New Braunfels. She planted some on the side of her house, and it's just thick and full. You can walk on it, but it's not really mowable. If you mow it, it damages it a little bit too much, but you can certainly walk on it, and it does well in more full sun areas. But the more you water it, the fuller and thicker and prettier it is, but it'll kind of overgrow all your other plants. So if you have a flower bed there, it'll grow over the top of all the flowers in your flower bed. So it works really well with larger shrubs, or a place where you don't have anything else planted. And other ground covers include pigeonberry, which is a shade loving ground cover, and then your snake herb, which does well in the sun, and it has this really pretty little purple flower. And then some of the invasive plants, Chinese tallow. It's a pretty tree, and it gets this beautiful fall color, but it's very prolific, and it's just going to be everywhere. So my neighbor has one that comes up in my yard all the time. I'm constantly having to pull up the babies. Brazilian pepper, salt cedar, old world blue stems like your King Ranch blue stem, which got a really big start when the highway department planted it on the side of the roads, and now we can't get rid of it. McCartney rose, this is pretty bad in the DeWitt County area. Kind of just takes over everything. Some people think, oh, it's dewberries, but it's not. That it has this white flower on it that is real pretty, but you don't want to let it get a start. And then our St. Augustine lawns are invasive, non-native. We want to get rid of those as much as we can. So I end with this quote by Doug Tallamy again. Every person on earth, depends entirely on the quality of the earth's ecosystems for his or her continued existence. Therefore, each of us carries an inherent responsibility for good earth stewardship. And these are just some examples of native lawns, people's front yards. So be brave, plant your native plants. And like I say, add some signage. And then here's just a list of some resources if you're interested. Native American Seed has, if you go to there, they have a nice catalog that you can look at. It has tips on native lawn type plantings. It has tips on how to go about putting in a pollinator garden. I already told you about the NIPSOT website. The Lady Bird Johnson, wildflower.org is a great one. And then the books I recommended by Douglas Tallamy, The Nature's Best Hope and Bringing Nature Home. The Xerces organization has lots of good information on their website. Pollinator Friendly Yards is you can like them on Facebook, and they put out some tips every so often that are good for native plants. And then Native Backyards is a girl from San Antonio. I can't think of her name right now. But she has this website, and she has all kinds of good tips on there for native plants, and you can get on her email list, and she'll email you every so often. You can email her back with questions, and she's really helpful. And you can also take down you'll have it in your directory, but you can email me, and I'll be happy to help you with any questions you have about native plants. So let's see, do we have any extra questions for me in the chat? I didn't, but let's see. Okay, let's see.
We do have one in the chat from
Okay.
Lauren. What are your thoughts on adapted or cultivated plants, for example, Jerusalem sage or vitex?
Okay, well, Jerusalem sage is not invasive, so it's good for nectar and so forth. I wouldn't. It's not a native plant, but it's okay, there. But vitex is very invasive. I would not recommend vitex. It's beautiful, but it spreads like crazy. there's one at I'm a master gardener, and so I work at the Victoria Education Gardens, and I do the xeriscape area, and next to me is the superstar plants. And so Vitex is one of the superstar plants. And every spring, I will pull up over 100 baby Vitex coming up everywhere in my xeriscape area. So it's beautiful, but it's spreads too much. So I would not really recommend that. In fact, I had one in my yard and I dug it out and threw it away. Any other questions? If not, I'll see y'all on Saturday. So if you have a question, you can talk to me on Saturday about it too. And I'd love to visit with you.
Thank you very much, Janet. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Wilfred, do you have anything to add to get us ready for Saturday?
Yeah, first, everybody should know that our class will be all outdoors and it'll be another hot day, so dress appropriately. We will do some walking, so wear appropriate footwear for a thorny environment because that's where you're going to be. Bring a hat, bring something to carry water in because we want to make sure everybody stays hydrated. Only other thing is directions. I'm pretty sure everybody will be coming to us turning off of Berkeley. So when you head north out of Berkeley, we're 8.2 miles from Berkeley on the east side of the highway. So look for our sign, and I'll also put out a poster that has TMN on it, so that hopefully that'll catch your eye. So otherwise, we're looking forward to having everybody.
What time do we need to be there Saturday?
I think the agenda says 8:30.
Well, I didn't get the agenda. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. Trying to get it back open again here.
Jeremy, mine said 9.
9 is the ranch tour. 8:30 is just the arrival, kind of welcome introduction.
Okay, I'll be there at 8:30. I'll be there a little earlier than 8:30.
I'll have to see if I printed the wrong thing out or something. Hopefully not.
Well, I'm coming from Richmond, so I just went by the agenda in our notebook for 9 o'clock. So I'll try and get there earlier as well.
No, one of the notebooks still also says 8:30 for the arrival. This is this year's, right? Yeah. Yeah, it should be 8:30 for arrival. There's no closed gate, so if you get here at 9, you'll be able to get to us.
Okay, it's a 2.5 hour drive for me. This is Lauren, so I'll see you as soon as I can.
Sure.
Okay, see you guys later. Bye.
Bye, Lauren. Anyone else have any questions about Saturday, concerns, anything like that? All right. In that case, we are 2 hours. Email, as always, will go out in the morning with the link and everything. Get your evaluations in and hours in as soon as possible, and we'll see you on Saturday.